Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the American Scouser TV's Monday Night Podcast. As you can see, I am not Tamuchin, and I'm filling in the big chair or the high stool or whatever we want to call it because he's not here. But filling in tonight and the host here with Paul Bickler. Bickler, how are you, my friend?
Doing good. Dad's out. This should get off the rails real quickly.
Yeah, as I put in if you're watching us on YouTube, like Alan is, greetings from Houston. Hello, Alan. Always good to say hello. Sir Z is coming in as well with good afternoon, guys. Lets you know we have some viewers out on the West Coast. So, where I come from here is if you're tuning in now, you realize that this is not some Muchin. You realize that he is not here. And as I said, as I put in the little comment section, when the boss is away, who knows what the other two idiots will say? You will all find out tonight. But Tamuchin is home celebrating Father's Day a day late, as his daughters were able to both come home to visit. So anyone who's been a longstanding listener of this podcast knows, other than whining about many things football and Trent playing in midfield, the only thing that Tamuchin enjoys more is spending time with his wife and his kids. So we wish him well. We hope they're having a great night out. I think they were going out to dinner. So knowing him, he's probably listening and cursing under his breath at what an idiot I am already 2 minutes in. So if you took the under and how long it would take Tamuchin to be irritated listening to this, rest assured it's already occurred. So Bickler, the crowd is calling for trivia. So my one trivia question to you is do you prefer to have trivia or not have trivia?
Yeah, I prefer not to have it. So let's not have it.
Once again, the beauties that happen when you sit in the host chair. In the host chair means you get the host control. So to Brian Shelton, yes, that means damn no trivia. Alan, no trivia. But we got a lot of folks here jumping in. Sir Z's coming in on the comments about your Denmark shirt. I was talking about my old school Atari style World Cup shirt that I'm wearing in honor of the two European competition and of course the Copa America that we will talk about ad nauseum this evening because, well, the manager still hasn't spoke. There's been no action. I'd almost go so far as to say there has been no business done at Anfield. It feels like outside of course, Taylor herself swiftly rolling through and bringing in a boatload of money. So let me know, Bickler, where is your take on this? We had a video, I think the morning show talked about it. Are you any level cause for concern at this point that it's been 2+ weeks and the most I know about Arne Slot is from his daughter's Instagram page?
I don't know. My life is upside down with coaching changes in general. Just my Michigan football team has a whole slew of new coaches, and they are very, very quiet on the Western Front on the recruiting trail. So it feels like just a continuation of the rest of the sporting events in my life. I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned because Edwards is involved. And if I know if there's anybody who like the one thing you don't have to worry about Edwards is that you just don't have to worry about the plan, right? So I feel like I'm not concerned about it. Do I think it's a little bit odd? Yeah, probably I do. But I also think that maybe they want this thing to ride out and have its moment organically after the tournament. I don't know. I don't know. I just think that there has been such a definitive break between, at the end of the season, the summer. You would have expected something to pop in the middle there, and we didn't see that. So when the tournament started riding through, I do think it's odd. I don't think we're going to get anything until we see business start to come through. But I do think it's weird that we haven't had any sort of formal announcement. Am I concerned that it means that he's not the manager? No. I just think it's an interesting choice. I mean, do you think this is this is to give Slot his moment in a spot that they've chosen, or do you think it's more to protect him from what's going to happen to, obviously, the over scrutiny of any sort of public thing that he has?
I I think there's a couple layers to it. I think that it was so public, Klopp's departure, that they didn't want to do it like 48 hours later. And I think they felt like they needed to let it go. We had to wait, as we talked about, I think till at least June 1st when it could like legally be signed, which I think then played into the whole Champions League final, it being in England. And I genuinely think they didn't want to have a press conference while this major event is happening and 90% of the mainstream media outlet folks are going to be gone. It does feel a little weird at this point that they've talked about it, announced it, but haven't had a press conference unless he just said, hey, I'd rather not have a big, pomp and circumstance press conference. Let me come in, talk to my players. I can't talk to all of them because of so many, international duties, and they're not even on holiday at this point. I want to take a little break with the wife and daughter, and I don't know where they are, but it looked sunny and warm with tasty beverages. I just think it's a little bit – I think it's gone a little further, and I can't believe that the club has allowed the manager – I know Alan says, I feel it's a little disrespectful to continue to not acknowledge the fans. I don't disagree, but here's the thing. I don't think the club said to Arne Slot, hey, do you want to do a press conference or not? And Arnie was like, nah, we'll pass. I'll talk to him at in the American tour. I'll talk to him when we get back from America. I can't see the club giving him that option. To me, this feels like this is driven by Edwards and management's decision of this is how we're going to unveil you, and this is why. And maybe this is the first real sign of the difference between Arne Slot head coach and Brendan Rodgers or Jurgen Klopp, manager of Liverpool football. What do you? Maybe that's
that's kind of what I was kind of wondering. Is this not as like Edwards personally making a point, but it feels like a little bit of a planting of the flag. You know what I mean? Like just a marker being set down for the fact that he is the head coach. Now, like if that's the case, right? Like then I get into like how respectful and how fair is that to Slot? And maybe he was hired because he didn't care. You know what I mean? And they knew he wouldn't care about that. So I don't know. It is interesting though. And I think there's fair arguments to be made both ways. Like I could think you could say, hey, it's disrespectful to the manager to not have something come out. And I think you can say to the fans who like were excited for this change, had to say goodbye in a very emotional manner to a very, very popular manager. I do think Alan's a little bit right here. Like the fans are owed something, but we always have known that Edwards, like the way that he thinks that fans are owed is by winning. Right. So we do know that like he's not afraid to ruffle some feathers in that regard. So interesting either way. It'll be interesting to see when he finally does speak. I think we'll find more out then, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
We always appreciate Saidu coming in with some of his sluggish FSG and or slander and hate. But Slot's press conference ain't our priority now, but rather addressing the DM and the left center back. I'm assuming that's left center back. Issues are more important. Sluggish FSG. I know you've been calling for center back depth additions. You've talked about DMs in the past. As we kind of look a little bit into this side and morph away from what Slot's decision of delaying making announcements, there is business happening right now. I know the window isn't officially open, but deals can be completed. I saw Newcastle sign Lloyd Kelly. West Ham's been active in the market, made a couple nice signings. Brighton hired themselves a new manager. Look out, he was born in America. Probably not good for you, Brighton. If you learned anything, that media is just going to rip on that fact. Guy was raised in another country, but he was born in America. He knows nothing. He's going to call it a PK, and it'll be over. But where is the level of the Bickler-Angst scale on the activity that's happened? And not just the activity, but, it's clear Edwards is back because there's no good leaks anymore because we're not even getting attached to every player. Where are you on the lack of movement with it being such a big summer? Did you want to see things happen before these competitions began?
I did want to see one signing before the competition began. I am not as anxious, I think, as I've been in the past regarding the transfer market because I don't. I think there are so many question marks on players that we already have that I think it's really important for this manager to settle in and see what he has for the system that he's carrying in and see what pieces fit and what pieces don't, what he's got to work with. I think he needs at least, ideally you take 2 or 3 players that the organization has already identified through just depth analysis. Like these are the positions we need. DM and center back are probably pretty good starting points. But I really think you see like 2 or 3 new pieces maybe this window, and then the rest you have to evaluate. And then you get to January, get to January and see what that looks like. Are there pieces we can move? Do we want to move anybody in January? Are we deficient in certain areas? But I think it's really going to take that first half of the year for Slot to sort of settle a new system in, see what he's got with the parts he has. And, we talked about this back and forth on Discord, but he's got some big decisions to make on whether like he can get Gakpo and Darwin into the same lineup. Can he recapture the initial form of Szoboszlai and what's his role in the system? Do players like Carvalho have a future in a system that actually utilizes an attacking midfielder? So like there's a lot of questions around players that we already have, except for Kostas Samaikis. That's it.
Yeah, he'll probably get a 3-year extension. They'll extend him out longer and longer. I was shocked to see that he didn't even make the Greek team that was trying. Like, I mean, he was a starter at one point. I think he captained their side, and he's not even getting called up for international friendlies. So how it can quickly change for you when you're not playing. So let's morph over to start with the Euros, and we're going to talk about a few of the matches, maybe get some more predictions out of us now that we've seen a little bit. But let's start with our players, obviously, that are at the Euros. Obviously, we are heavily, representing the Dutch, which always makes me laugh as we hired a Dutch manager. It's like they were like, what nationality do we have the most of? Good thing it's not English. And then they were like, the Dutch. So a couple internationals, obviously. Let's start with the big talking point. The first opening match, Andy Robertson captains Scotland, and they get absolutely battered by Germany. 5-1, and I'm not sure it was that close. Probably could have been a lot worse. Were you able to see some of that match on Friday? Did you watch that demolition in live time?
So this has been weird. I've been able to watch some matches depending on my call schedule for work. It's been pretty disjointed. I did get pieces of that match. Just looked overrun all over the place, so it's hard to judge a team. You go down 10 men on like the reddest of red cards that I've ever seen. Yeah, I thought they looked overrun. I thought Andy Robertson also looked every bit of 30-some years old, and like he's been run into the ground, which I think we all know is true. So I still probably makes him like the first or second best player on that team. But we'll see what happens. Would love for them to pull it around a little bit, get a result here. But we'll see. He just looked old.
Yeah, it wasn't a refreshing sight. And unfortunately, it was a sight that I got kind of used to seeing at times last year, which is a little disconcerting and disheartening. I've been one who has said, if you took loyalties aside, he's probably a player that if you could turn 40, 50 million at this point in his age and with all the miles on his legs, it would be such good business. It would be the type of business. It would be the exact type of Edwards move. But I think he's just been such a good loyal servant to the club. I don't think you want to move characters like him out of the club at a time of so much change. If this were 2 years into Slot's reign, maybe. But I think that he's the type of player you keep at this point. Interestingly enough, let's go to the next couple players here. Joe Gomez makes the final roster with England, along with Trent. To some, quite a surprise inclusion in Gareth Southgate's starting 11 to open the tournament. I know Alan has already chimed in. Oh, sorry, grabbed the wrong comment. I'll be amazed if Trent plays again for England in this tournament. So Alan is clearly taking the cheese that the English media is putting out, that he was god awful and dog shit. I did not think he was overly good, to be honest. And I thought there were times he looked like a right back playing in midfield at a European Championship, which probably isn't the place to start that experiment at the national team level when you're trying to bring it home for the first time in a lifetime. So was this more about Gareth Southgate once again overthinking things? Is this about Trent being average at best to some of our comments in there? What was your take on Trent's performance yesterday, assuming you saw some or the highlights of that debacle?
I think it's really hard to judge a player who's playing his first major competition in a new position on the field when like 4 of the 5 players that immediately around him and affect his position all had average to below average performances. Like, I thought literally everybody, maybe outside Bellingham, had like a pretty subpar performance. So like, I don't know if you're looking at that between Stones, Walker, Foden, who disappeared. Like, I don't know how you sit there. I think he did some good things. He also did some things which are the very reason none of us wanted. Well, I shouldn't say none of us. Most of us on this pod did not want him in midfield. Like, cough up the ball in the one spot you don't want to when you're in transition, and like put them in on goal, on your own goal. Like, so we did see some of those things, like some of those things that like, and that's the thing. I think there were bad performances all over the pitch, but I think the one thing is why we're so hyper focused on Trent. And the one thing that we remember from that game is him coughing up the ball and it almost leading to a goal. But we don't remember some of the things that he did, like from a passing standpoint, that there aren't very many other people on that team or in the England setup that are capable of doing, which is why he's starting there to begin with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually thought it was kind of gutsy on Southgate's part, especially for someone who's been criticized for not going for it. You're basically starting all your attackers, which England normally doesn't do, right? They normally just kind of bank it back and move it in. I think the problem is Gareth Southgate is trying to play this system that allows him to play Trent, Phil Foden, Bellingham, and Saka all on the same team. But the problem with that is it marginalizes their greatest asset, which is they have the best goal-scoring striker in the entire tournament, and he had 2 touches in competitive areas yesterday, like in the final third. And it's great to have Trent's pinging balls from left to right, and it's great to have Phil Foden, drifting inside and dropping into the 10 and Bellingham making lung-busting runs. But if your almost all-time leading goal scorer isn't scoring goals, like, then what was this for? Like, they were literally better when Harry Kane was sitting up top with, Jordan Henderson and Calvin Phillips in the midfield. Like, I genuinely don't understand how that's feasible, except for the fact that I do believe they are actually really kind of hurting themselves despite themselves. So it'll be interesting. Do you think that Trent will get the start in the next match, or do you think we'll see most likely Conor Gallagher because of the matchup specifically? Because it sounded like it was down to him or Gallagher. And I know Gallagher replaced him on the 60-minute mark. So,
well, listen, we have Southgate involved, so anything's possible. I think the smart move is to stick with what you have, just because we've seen what can happen to Trent when his head goes down. And I'm not saying you want to cater to a player that has a bad disposition, but like, I don't think the performance merit out of all the performances on the pitch, I wouldn't say that his was a standout performance in which we can say, hey, this is the reason that we were, we only won by 1 goal, right? Like, I say you stay with it, even though I don't think midfield is where I would want him in my system. But I think for what you have right now, you stick with it. I would put him back in.
And obviously Netherlands I'd say it was probably, in their eyes, a disappointing result to draw the first opening match. I think they saw that as a match they should win. I think not only more or less because I think that they did win. I apologize. They won their match 2-1. It was Denmark and Slovenia that had the 1-1 draw. So Netherlands gets the 2-1 win. Gakpo gets the first goal. Virgil picks up a petulant yellow card for really no reason. I thought he might actually get himself almost in trouble with how much he balked and barked at the ref after it. But then I remembered at least he is the captain, so he's the only person allowed to argue nowadays. But not a smart yellow card in a tournament where 2 yellows equals a 1-match ban. So now he's got to really be careful the rest of the way here through these group stages. And I think the first round. So Gakpo had a really good first half, got a little bit less influential, I thought, in the second half. Talk to me about what you saw from Gakpo. Obviously, he was out on the left. We know that's where he wants to play, where he likes to play. Will that be where we see him playing his football come next season?
I mean, I think what we do on the left is that critical piece of the puzzle, right? Because that's Diaz's best position. It also tends to be where Darwin plays the best. I think Gakpo is probably the one that you should put there because if you need to, you can flip Diaz to the right. I also think that Diaz is probably one of those players that's like a fringe player that if the right amount comes in from the right team, he could be somebody who gets moved. So, I mean, it's very possible. And I think Gakpo, the way that he plays in the national team on the left, has to factor in for Slot in terms of how he uses them. I still think Gakpo plays really, really good, plays really, really well centrally because he can hold up play, especially in a possession-based attacking team. So I still think there is a spot for him that could be worked into there. I guess the answer to that, Gally, is I don't know. I mean, I think it makes sense, but I think we really have to figure out and this is just really the elephant in the room is what happens with Darwin, right? What is the plan for him? And I think that is sort of the first domino that affects everything behind it. And Gakpo is probably that second domino behind it, in my opinion.
And obviously, Gravenberch was an unused substitute. It does not sound like Ronald Koeman has him very much in his thoughts in any way. He's been very critical of him. I don't know that we'll see a Gravenberch sighting in this tournament. Maybe he'll get an appearance. Someone who is very influential and important to his side is Dominik Szoboszlai, the captain of Hungary. Were you able to see any of the Hungary match that you must have had an illegal streaming service for? Because I'm not sure it was on any channel in the United States.
Yes and yes. I
went to you. I go to you for my illegal TV streams.
I did see it. We always talked about how everything for Hungary runs through him, right? I think the problem is you got a young 20 captain national team, tons of experience, and then he goes in there and he was doing his best Bruno Fernandes impression in terms of his body language and stuff. It was really, really poor, and it was just really surprising to see. And I think that's sort of, that's sort of a larger concern for me because the one thing you could say about him coming in was he had the right mentality and he had the right experience at that level. If anything, those are playing into his favor at his age. Now we've got a guy who's been off the boil for almost an entire calendar year. And we have a guy who's essentially looks like his disposition, confidence, and body language is disconnected from not only his players, but his own ability. And so we've got a lot of, I have a lot of concerns there about what happens with him. And we talked about, the manager's got to figure out how we can play Gakpo and Darwin together and what their roles are going to be. I think arguably his biggest job is going to be where's Szoboszlai's home position, and can you recapture that original form you brought him in on? And I think that's arguably a bigger job than what happens with Darwin.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I was very critical, obviously, to close out last season. I thought that he came with all the flair and pomp and circumstance, and it was all great, and it was worthy of the excitement because I thought the play on the pitch was very, very good. I thought that eventually he started to come off, and that he looked like a guy who all his life was. It all came so easy for him, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but because he's always been the best player in Hungary, and then he was always the best player in every youth team setup, and he was basically the best player at Salzburg in his time there, and then he moved on and he got up to Leipzig, and he was a very influential and important player there. And I genuinely, I know a lot of people talk all the time. I see the posts in our Discord channels, and I see the comments on Facebook where people make the comments of, if Darwin finished 30% of his sitters, we would have won. Darwin Nunez got the club more points per goal than any other player, as in his goals actually equated to draws and wins, because many of his goals were late and were in close games. Like these are goals that actually attributed to plus, rounds in the column. I understand he missed a lot of sitters. It's not that argument, but there were just as many Soboslai massive misses. I mean, I can think of 2 or 3 massive opportunities that weren't even put on frame that were big games where we needed 2 points from a draw, or we needed another goal to get a draw or get a win. And there's opportunities for all the players on this side. And I feel, because of the front three's inability to score for that 8-week period where they really struggled and the stats were so bad and easy, I think many of the players outside of McAllister in the midfield really got a pass from about January till May in the last season outside of Harvey Elliott. And again, here's a player keeping Harvey Elliott out of the lineup for the majority of the season. And I just think that it went too long. He didn't get the hook soon enough. And I think the price tag had something to do with that. And, it's going to be interesting with him because these guys didn't stump up 77 million pounds for him. Like Edwards and company didn't trigger that release clause, and they probably wouldn't have triggered that release clause for the full freight and had to pay it all up front and make that deposit. I think there's a player in there. I just worry that it might be a player like Luis Alberto was in there, and he just didn't fit here and he didn't fit England. And before we know it, we're watching him in Italy rip it up. And while you're at it, Lewis, take that Saudi money because we could use that 11 million that comes to us if that transfer goes through, okay? Brendan Rodgers' greatest signing will be a guy that got sold twice, and we profited on twice since he left. So last but not least, Diego Jota and Konate. Konate, an unused substitute. I think I didn't get to see the end of the match with France today. I don't believe he got into the match. Do you expect Konate to get any run out here? Or do you think he's firmly, deeply behind Saliba and Ubameyang or whatever his name that I can never pronounce properly?
Yeah, I think he'll get rotated in. I think there'll be some rotation here, and we'll see him. But I do think he is sitting behind those just based on form. This year was a pretty down year for him. We talked about the year before, him consistently being one of our better center backs when he was healthy. He just wasn't there enough. And I think this was sort of the opposite, where like he was in and out with health issues, but I never thought he caught a real run of consistency. Now, granted, he also seemed like he was falling out of favor a little bit with Jurgen, where like there were some times where we would have thought we would have seen him start, and we saw Gomez or we saw Kwanzaa instead. So I do think he's firmly behind there in the pecking order, but I think we'll see him at some point.
So, and with Jota, before we look at the standings here a little bit after a couple matches and look here, Jota, obviously, I think his best chance here this tournament, coming off the injuries and not really playing a lot at the end of the year, probably coming from the bench and being an impact sub for Portugal. Do you see him cracking their starting 11? Or, they still got to play the ghost that is Ronaldo every match that matters. So,
yes, no, I don't think we're gonna see him between. God, dude, I'm just looking at this lineup with just how unlikable Portugal is in general.
It's unbelievable.
They're so unlikable. Even like Polina is just a total like shyster right in the middle of the park. You got Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, Cristiano Ronaldo. Oh God. Leao has been, I think when you look at that front three, you got to think that Jota's probably coming off the bench barring some sort of an injury here. Maybe Ronaldo will pull a hamstring finally at the ripe age of 52, and we'll see him. But, I think God, I also didn't realize how old this Portugal team is. Just Pepe at 41 starting in the back. It'll be interesting. I think he's going to get rotated in. I don't see him supplanting that front three outside of injury just because he's coming back from such a long-term issue.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think he'll supplant them. I also think, though, that even though Pepe is 41 years old,
it's a young 41.
It's a young 41, and his hairline has receded so far back, he is genuinely now bald. He had a receding hairline from the beginning of his career. Like, he came into football. He also came in a very old and chiseled, 13-year-old, Yeah. I feel like he showed up at some Brazilian club at 13 or Portuguese club or wherever it was he came up through Sporting or Porto or whatever club he came into and probably bullied the guy at the front gate to let him play today. He just probably just kicked the guy in the shin. He's playing in this tournament, I'm sure, because it's some type of record on where he's looking to get a red card in the 5th consecutive Euros or something along those lines. I mean, the man has been around forever, but you got to give him credit. I watched him play a couple times this year in the Portuguese league. He still gets at it and is still 100% in his opponent's ear, ass, and jaw from the moment the match starts till the end with all the shithousery that a 41-year-old man needs to compete. When you watch old dudes do things, we always joke about that, old man strength, coming off Father's Day, what a perfect little segue, right? Every father, there were a lot of fathers went out yesterday and decided, I'm going to, beat my 16-year-old son at basketball. And most of them cheated deliberately because that's the only way it's probably happening, or their kid's not very good. But there's that thing about old man strength, and I don't think you mess with it. And I think there's something about that in these chiseled old veteran players that play forever. I know I don't want to run into Jamie Vardy at the end of a training session where he feels like I did something dirty or screwed him over. Because you know as well as I do, with 5 minutes left, I'm getting taken out from nowhere. He's going to have it. There's going to be a little wink, a wry smile, and you're like, you're fine. And I think the young players know that with guys like Pepe. And I bet that Portuguese team really respects him. I think if they get their defensive setup right, they're a little bit of a sneaky dark horse, in my opinion, in this thing. Because they can score goals all over the pitch.
Pepe has been in the national team setup in the first team for 16 years, and it's been in top flight football for 19 seasons. So that's fucking unreal.
See, and those are the type of top level reporting we bring to you here. Yeah. That his receding hairline has made him now bald. He's that old. So Germany, a resounding victory, obviously. Switzerland with a big win over Hungary. And then, of course, we didn't really touch on Spain. I know people said that they thought that the Netherlands game might have been the best match so far, the match of football. I thought Spain looked the best, even though at times they looked a little naive defensively. But Spain looks a different unit entirely. And I'm sorry. A lot of hype is being thrown out around a 16-year-old kid playing in the Euros. When you're a 16-year-old kid playing for Spain against Croatia, and you are head and shoulders the best player on the field, and Luka Modric was on the field, that kid is special. What he was doing out on that wing, if I'm that left back, I'm thinking to myself, take me off. Take me off. It is basically what I feel like happens in the NBA when Ant Edwards is on his game and some like middle-aged journeyman has to guard him. And he's like, I know what he's about to do to me at any moment. And like you could almost see the defenders look when the kid was dribbling at him, like, please don't double nutmeg me. Please. Because this kid's gonna score a goal in this tournament. There's no doubt in my mind. I think Spain might have moved themselves from like one of the teams that can win to the favorite off that performance, because they didn't do it to Albania. They did it to Croatia, and they made Croatia look exactly as old as they are, which is as old as dirt. What were your thoughts on Spain, Italy, Albania, Croatia, what you saw from it? Are you worried for Croatia? How do you think this plays out?
Oh, yeah.
That's the toughest group for me.
I think Croatia is 2 years removed from being everybody's favorite dark horse. And I think, like, what stood out to me is that midfield is just ancient. I mean, the youngest one is 30 and playing in the Saudi league. Like, I mean, it's like, it's just not a good recipe for any sort of national team success. Like, I thought like it was pretty chalky all the way through. It was pretty chalky until we got to Group D, really. So, like, not to skip too far ahead.
No. Yeah, that's where we're going.
Yeah, I just thought Croatia looked old. I look, dude, I've got burned so many times in the past on Spain. Like, I'm reserving judgment until I feel like they play competition that's like, up for them. And I think Croatia is riding by on name alone right now. I really do. So we'll see. Netherlands game was phenomenal. Group D, I thought that was a really wide open game. I thought it was really good. I think Austria is Croatia like 4 years ago. I think Austria is sneaky good. And I think they're going to cause they'll cause problems. If they're allowed to go, if they can get out of this group, I can see them making some noise. But yeah, I thought both those games were actually pretty fun to watch, pretty good watches. France was
I was going to say France today. I did not get to see it. So I know it was a 1-0 victory.
I think it was very similar to England's performance, except for that France had more chances and couldn't convert. I also thought the Mbappe thing was weird to me, like the whole nose injury, which didn't look super bad at first, is apparently really bad. He got treatment, came back out, went down again, got yellow carded for going down. They got pulled back off the pitch. The whole thing was very dramatic. It reminded me of like a lot of Scorsese films that I love, but could have been done in half the time. Like it was just very long, drawn out, and dramatic, which is also very French.
It is very French, and it's very Mbappe. I mean, it took him 8 years to secure a transfer on a free transfer to the place we knew he was going for the entire 8 years. Like, yes. I had to live that the whole freaking time. What the fucking Christ? Just sign a goddamn contract. Why didn't they just create a deal way back? He should have just said, I'm going to PSG from Monaco, and then I'm going to Real Madrid in 2024 or whatever year. Like, just it was the most ridiculous thing ever. I genuinely have never been more soured on a great, great player. I root for him to fail more than any other player in football. And that's crazy to me because there's people I hate.
Is he football's equivalent of Kevin Durant? Because that's what it feels like.
Yes. I think it is. I think that's a good analogy. If you had said LeBron, I would have been frustrated because that's a guy who I think gets too much heat. For being great, but gives enough reason for the haters to hate him.
But someone who's like elite talented, like maybe one of the greatest, but is just so thin-skinned.
It's just unbelievable. He definitely, I would say, if I thought he knew how social media worked, he would definitely have some burner accounts of his.
Oh yeah, 100%.
There's no question.
He would be responding to people.
I think Kevin Durant not only has – I think Kevin Durant has burner accounts, and I think he has fake accounts that he gives himself heat so his burners can go at people. Yeah. And, like, I just think he loves drama that much. So England, Denmark, Slovenia, and Serbia, you see any – I know England didn't look great. Denmark struggled at times. Do you have any fear or any worry, though, that those two don't finish 1-2 in that group? Just on talent.
I feel like Slovenia, Serbia, that whole like Romania, Czech, like that whole block, I feel like it is a real like gambler's choice. Like I feel like those are any of those teams are capable of pulling off like the improbable. But I do feel like when you look at the play, even though it was a 1-1 draw, Denmark just felt like they were at another level. And I think England, I think there's so much talent for England that's going to click, or I think they're solid defensively enough to like to be there until it clicks. So I think that both of those two are still obviously the betting favorites. I feel comfortable with those two still.
And when we move into Group E, the craziness that ensued with, Belgium losing. I mean, you can't make this shit up. Like, I'm dead serious when I say this. I think the greatest thing that might happen is Kevin De Bruyne staying in the Premier League, because I feel like Kevin De Bruyne at this point is almost like the mush. Like, if he is associated with your team, maybe over a full season you can win. But if there's a big moment you need, I feel like Belgium's entire golden era might be wrapped up in like Eden Hazard and Kevin De Bruyne's inabilities to basically step up when times require it in big moments. Like, I genuinely have fun when Belgium loses, because I think about that pouty, whiny, red cheek. Like, I just think about De Bruyne throwing a temper tantrum, sounding like a little kid on helium when he talks, yelling at teammates, and like everyone in the room, like Lukaku and the rest of them, just being like, who is listening to this little white man? Like, who is listening to him? Is anyone listening to him? Because all he does is get hurt and play poorly on the biggest stage, and then get called the greatest player in the world ad nauseum.
Yeah, I feel like De Bruyne, not only in like looks and attitude, but like just his entire like demeanor is slowly shifting into Scott Farkas from the Christmas Story. Like, and he's just gonna be wearing that fucking hat one day when he's out there. Like, I can't unsee it, dude. Like, and like it's so good. And so I just think, like, I don't know, man. Belgium, like, so like in my job, I work with banking integration a lot, and like it's always a total crapshoot whether this integration is going to work when we're changing software. And like the clients will start to get nervous, and I'll immediately have to shut that juju down when they're like, well, what if such and such? I'm like, we're not even going to discuss if that happens, because I don't want to put that on the project. And I feel like Belgium's in a similar position where they're like, yeah, but what if we suck again? And like, and then it creeps in and it happens again. And I just think they're one of those teams. Like, I'm in this channel with a group of friends, and somebody was like yelling about the game on our Discord channel for the betting thing, and I was like, I don't know why if you bet on Belgium at this point, like, I don't even know why you're upset with like, you should only be upset with yourself. It's not like
Correct.
We don't have any historical context for this. It's almost like, and I was almost thinking, like, this is why this tournament is so great. We've had upsets, we've had great play, and we've had Belgium being upset, which is like, so everything that we could have hoped for and everything that we expect in a great tournament is happening.
As I would say, like, if you're betting on Belgium to win at the Euros, or even win matches at the Euros, and you're mad about bad performances, like, that's basically the equivalent of throwing money on Rory not throwing it up on his shoes yesterday at the U.S. Open and finishing that job off. Like, that's just stupidity. It's been a decade. The guy's finished basically in the top 5. You have to play trends, and you have to know what people, and when people make big moves and say big things, they usually lay big eggs. And I feel like that's what Belgium is doing once again. They haven't played any matches. Group F kicks off tomorrow. But as you can imagine, seeing that Turkey is in that group, if we don't at least acknowledge that group, we could be in trouble when the boss gets around to finally watching this thing tonight. So we got the Czechia, Georgia, Portugal, Turkey. Where do you see this group going? I personally think Portugal will be able to go top of this group, but there's some tricky fixtures in there. Are you voting for? Are you going to roll with Timuchin's Turks in red purely so that we hope they get to the next round so he's in a better mood? Would it be best to get them out of this thing so we get the stress and anxiety out of his life? Where are we rolling on with this?
I think it's better content if they go through. I would pull them second to go through. I really want to make an election joke with Georgia in there, but I'm not going to. I think Portugal walks this group. I just think that the talent level that Portugal has on that side, even though they're getting older, like they should walk this group. I would love for Turkey to go through just so we can see, like, I would like to see like some drama and a real anxious Tunisian too. So I think it'd be good for everybody if they went through.
So can I ask you this one quickly, and then we'll transition over, talk a little Copa America, talk a little bit about maybe the U.S. game against Brazil if we have time in there. But I want to thank Flop Mob here for having the best soccer website in the whole world, because it tells you scores, lineups, and every TV channel and game of where it's streaming. It might be the best app I have on my phone, and I appreciate whoever it was in Discord that introduced me to it. So now that shameless plug's out there, I appreciate them actually creating this third place teams bracket and table to let you know in live time what teams will be going through. But I need to ask you this question. Where do you stand on these tournaments either expanding or decreasing to the point where we have 4 of the 6 third place teams going through? So we're literally only eliminating 8 total teams out of the 24 teams qualify for the toughest tournament in the world to qualify for, the Euros. And they're going to then push through 16 of those 24. Like, shouldn't this tournament just expand to 32 teams and like the World Cup used to be, and just have first and second? I feel like these third place teams moving on changes the beauty of what was group play into knockout rounds.
Yes, I 100% agree. I'm never in favor of more games right now because I love club season too much, and I want my players to play well for the club and not be hurt. But I will say, if you are going to add more games, I would much rather it be a larger field and then water down essentially the product, which is what I feel like happens when we do this, right? When we continue to have these consolation brackets and stuff, I feel like it essentially just waters down the importance of not only the group stage, but the entire thing itself. Like how many of us really want to watch consolation matches outside of the, obviously you feel differently if it's one of your countries, but like how much of us really want to watch, like as a neutral, consolation matches? Like, I just think it really lessens a great product.
Yeah, and I just feel like there's something symmetrically beautiful about 1 versus 2 on both sides. You can't play a team you already played until all the way in the finals. Like, there's so many things that are built in to make it as great of an opportunity. And then sometimes you get that random ass occasion, where a team wins a group they weren't supposed to win, like Japan did a couple years ago when they got like a great run through because they had a great couple set of matchups that they could take on and they went deeper. And you end up with one of these powerhouse like Italy, England in the round of 16. The whole third place is always weird to me because like now 2 2s end up playing each other and 3s play 1s, but not all 1s don't play a 3. Like, it's just a very awkward way to go about it. And I just don't feel like it makes any sense to me, especially when there are 4 high-quality European countries left out of every Euro.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, you could have that field be a little bit larger. So, but like most things on this show, we spend most of the time talking about Europe. Say we're going to split it up evenly and then leave all the United States and America stuff left off over there, but we got a couple minutes left here. We'll talk a little bit here about the Copa America, which starts in a couple weeks. Most of the countries have been finishing up their friendly matches in preparation. The United States played 2 matches. You would not believe it was the same side because in one match they got wiped out by Colombia, which would make you think it was the United States men's national team. And the other match, they outplayed Brazil and should have beat them, which would make you think it was probably not the United States men's national team. Or you quickly realize that that is not the same set of Brazilian talent that they used to put out at the national team level. But how much of this will you watch, Paul? It's a good tournament. It's a good tournament.
Yeah. I probably had no. I appreciate you getting ahead of doing damage control before I did it to us. I'll watch. I will watch it. I probably won't be as invested as heavily as I was in the Euros, but I will watch it. I do enjoy these comps. I do. Was it Ronaldo or Ronaldinho who came out on the Brazil team this week?
It was Ronaldinho, but some are saying now that it was actually it was part of it was part of a advertising thing.
Oh, here we go. I love how he comes out. He came out and said it's like he's never in his life seen a team that doesn't have the Brazilian samba spirit and the flair that any of these other teams have ever had. Like, this is the first, the worst Brazil team that he's ever seen. And then he comes out the next day and says, "Psych, I was just kidding. I just want them to be motivated." And I was like, "Come on, dude. Let's just own it." He's
trying everything he can to walk that thing back. I would like to remind him that there was a Brazilian team that once lost 7-1 on home soil.
Yes.
So they might be worse. Though I will say it is, that team had David Luiz, which in itself is a reason to lose 7-1. And, Neymar did break his back in the middle of the match. So that was kind of they were actually more worried about him because they knew how hurt he was. And we were all just clowning him because we were like all sharing the meme of him rolling at that other World Cup game where he just rolled. I mean, it's still the greatest. It's one of the greatest. It's everything that makes people who hate football, soccer. It is the definition of why. So let me ask you then, when it comes to this tournament, and all of these tournament games, to be honest, when it comes to our guys, when it comes to guys you buy, how much stock do you put in these tournaments from a form standpoint? Do you think there will be carryover? Like, if Uruguay has a really great tournament and Darwin Nunez is the star of this tournament, which in Bielsa's system, he very much has a chance to be, do you think that obviously bodes well for his confidence? Do you think there is any translation to club game from international football? Like, where do you see it from the standpoint of the player's perspective?
I think it's always a positive when they have great form through these competitions, rolling into a club that they're already at. I think where it gets tricky is when you have players that play lights out at the international level and then boost their value from a transfer standpoint, right? How many years of Renato Sanchez have we seen do well for Portugal and then go just die slowly in Swansea, right? Like, I mean, I just think, every tournament has an Amrabat, right? So, it's like we just have to be really careful about knowing that some of these players just definitely play better in their national systems just based on the setup. But I do think from any of our players or any players that are going from, that are staying within their own club, I always think these are great confidence boosters. If they have a good tournament, they can carry that in. I think it could be huge for a player like Darwin because I think one of the things as a striker is so much that is visualization and confidence. And I think those two are interconnected. So if he starts putting them away, I think that the odds are he comes back and instead of hitting post, he's 5 inches the other way and they're going in, right? Like, I think that is a very, very real thing that can happen through these tournaments. So we'll have our fingers crossed for that one because, like you said, I do think there's a good, he's played lights out for Uruguay. So I think there's a very good chance you see Darwin have a really great tournament here.
I think it would be important for him. I think it breeds his confidence. I think if he can come in feeling good, I think it also helps. I know it sounds stupid. I think it helps that he's spending 6 weeks training and traveling throughout the United States, that then they're going to come back and do training and traveling and eating. And I think Darwin needs repetition and Darwin needs to grow up. And we've talked about this. He needs to mature. Grow up's not a right way to say it because I don't think he's a jerk. He's never done anything that's proven to look like he disrespects the club. Was it probably stupid to take all his Liverpool pictures off of social media? Yes. Dumb. Should he have been getting hate mail and death threats through social media? No. So, like this is why a veteran player probably doesn't do it. They deactivate their account or they shut off notifications. He was like, just delete the pictures. And someone did it for him. So, but I think this is big for him. I think it's really important. I also think it could be an important summer for Alexis McAllister, because I think you're going to see Alexis McAllister have a chance to build on what was a really special first season at Liverpool. And I think he could kind of, if they win this tournament and he is 1A to Messi's, or 1B to Messi's 1A, if he is pulling the strings like he did at that World Cup, I think Alexis McAllister can really take his stock to a new level. And I hope it then instills in him the belief that, and in Slot, that more of the team and attack and play should be built around McAllister, because I feel like times when he got to play in the actual 8 last year was when we actually saw Klopp started to actually create space and movement around his skill sets. And that's when we saw the cheeky assists on the outside of the box and him creating. And the things I think we wanted to see from Szoboszlai, I think we were seeing from McAllister. And I think that's going to have to be his role for him to have a really big part. And for me, as much as he needs to figure out Darwin and figure out Szoboszlai, I think he needs to really understand that you have two creative forces in the side, really, and it's Trent and McAllister. And wherever you put them on the pitch, they need to be – the players around them need to work towards their skills and not vice versa. And I think at times we're always doing that.
Where do you see McAllister landing in the new formation?
I feel like he's going to have to play in a more advanced role, because I don't think Slot's going to want him in one of those two deep lying role sixes, but I could be wrong there. You think he'll be in the deep? You think it'll be him and Gravenberch at the end of the day?
I think it'll be,
or him and Endo.
You could do him and Gravenberch. Here's my thing. I think that you still need a dominant elite 6, and that's really, really difficult because you don't have – it's a shallow field, right, in terms of what's available. And the reason I say that is because when you look at that, it's a double pivot while defending, but in possession, essentially one of those two deep-lying midfielders plays like an anchor, and the other one goes up like an attacking mid, which I think is the best world. That's the best of both worlds for McAllister, because that means when you have him providing defensive help, but I think more importantly, in transition, he's playing deep. So you get all the deep lying passing stuff that you get with McAllister. And then when you're in attack and he's forward, he's already in an attacking position by nature. So I think it really plays to his strengths, but I don't know.
No, thinking of it that way, I think maybe in that case it probably is where you land, and that really is how his role in the Argentina side was born. Was him kind of being that second double pivot /6 that is pushed forward in possession. It'll be interesting to see how Argentina uses him. If you were betting on the Copa, would you be heavy bet on Argentina to win it again? Do you think there is really an outside? I mean, I think it's Argentina, Brazil, might be Uruguay third, and then Colombia, I think, or somewhere along those lines. Like, where would your betting money be? How do you see that tournament planning out?
I think it's heavy Argentina, and I think the gap is larger than a lot of people think. And I think if I'm taking a second team, I actually like Uruguay over Brazil. And that's a little bit of recency bias, but I think they're younger, and I think they've got a better system. Like, in terms of what, like, the players in the system playing that way. It's been a really, really long time since I thought Brazil looked like they had an identifiable, cohesive system that we could see. And I think Uruguay definitely has that. So that's where I kind of fall. That was
my dark horse, or my alternate pick to Argentina. If I were betting it as just I got to win money, I'm going to pick Argentina because that's the smartest bet. If I was actually laying money on this tournament, it wouldn't be on Argentina because they're the favorite and you don't make any money betting on favorites. I'd probably bet Uruguay. So I'm going to get you out of here on this. And I love the U.S. hate, but U.S. is in a group with Bolivia, Panama, USA, and Uruguay. 2 teams make it out. USA get out of that group?
You got to hope a guy who spells his name Greg with 3 G's figures it out.
That's a hard no from Paul Bickler, folks. That is a hard no from my friend Paul Bickler.
He's got to figure out that group. I mean, he's got to, but I just don't have any faith in anything positive coming out of that.
Yeah, we will talk a little bit more about this, of course. We will. I'm sure I will get some of my rants in as time comes up and weeks go on, leading through this Copa and the U.S. debacle. I mean, the U.S. men's national team that's going to just put on a good performance. I do think they'll get out of that group. I really do. And I think that is a success for them. And if they can put up a good performance in a quarterfinal or round of 16, when you get out and you're only in a group of 8, you know, you're pretty much there. So there is a real chance. You know, this isn't a big field. So the U.S. should absolutely be going into this tournament not thinking they can win it, but playing it to try to win it. And they actually looked like that when they were playing Brazil. So I'll give them some credit for showing up and showing out for one night. But you got to do it more than once before I become a believer. And when you have 3 G's in your name, there's a good chance I won't ever become a believer. But what you should believe is if you aren't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, you need to get over there right now. As Timuchin would say, grab a friend by the ear, drag them there as well. Get them to subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Instagram. You can find us as well in our Facebook groups. But really, the YouTube channel is where you'll get the most bang for your buck. It's also where you can find our most recent tactics boards, short videos, reels, Premier League show, and of course the morning coffee show that we do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with Timuchin and friends. Any parting shots, my friend?
I just don't understand how you have a freaking 5-letter name and 3 of them are G's. I don't get it.
It is strange. It is strange. It'd work out well if he sold processed eggs out of a machine in the northern part of Newcastle. But you know, there's no sausage rolls for that man. Just bad sneakers, tight jeans, and poor decisions when it comes to tactics. But this isn't an American U.S. bashing podcast. Oh, wait, maybe it is sometimes. But we will be back next week with all 3 of us, I believe, back in tow. We'll talk about some more of the Euros. Hopefully, we'll hear some Liverpool news. Who knows? Maybe even a signing or 2. All right, everyone. Have a great week, and we will see you next week on the podcast.